Hey everyone, how are you today? So thrilled that you're here. This is Wednesday afternoon at 3 o'clock on the East Coast, and we are the Death Chicks. We are so thrilled you're here. You have caught us on our second show of the Afterlife series. Very, very fascinating subject, whether you're personally interested or you feel it's important. Perhaps you've had a loved one who's passed, and so you are interested in this topic. Maybe you're just curious. Or maybe you're a skeptic, and if you're one of the skeptics out there, we want to hear from you too. We do offer all perspectives on this show, so we are thrilled to have you. And today we've got a very exciting guest, Jack Mario, who is an evidential medium. Misty is going to be giving him a little bit more of a proper introduction, but I love the word evidential. We're going to find out what that really means. I mean, it means what it means, I suppose, but we're going to get a little bit more into the meat of that. So welcome everybody, and hang on, because we are on not only just a ride on this plane, but to the afterlife we go. All right, over to you.
Thanks, Patty. Thanks.
Welcome.
Yeah, I love just the idea of journeying and death as a journey. We use that a lot in our when we talk about death, dying, grief, and loss, and it is a journey. And when we start to talk about the other side, we're really zipped along here, and we're really excited to have Jack Mario with us. Jack is an internationally known evidential medium. He works and lives in Gilbert, Arizona. Jack's known for delivering detailed and accurate messages from those who have passed, showing us and his clients the continuity of life after physical death. And this can be very soothing and comforting for people during their grieving process. Along with conducting readings, Jack gives lectures on mediumship, on psychic awareness, on self-empowerment, and on intuition. So thank you so much, Jack, for joining us. And maybe we'll get started with, can you explain for us how it was when you first realized you had this gift?
Excuse me, sorry. That's the part when I should have muted. No, when I was
That's right, you're doing fine.
Yeah, when I was about 6 or 7, I realized that not everybody was seeing what I was, because I was in this class, we were on the floor for some story time or something, and I was seeing this guy in the corner of the room, and he'd open these cabinets, and he was going through them and pulling things out, and I was explaining this to my friend, and at this point he was like, there's no one there, you're crazy, you're basically he thought I was lying, and I was like, clearly you're blind, because there was someone right there. Like, I can clearly see them, and this is all the kind of stuff that he was taking out. And later it came to be like that stuff that I saw him pulling out was stuff that was for like this thing we were doing later during the day, some sort of project. But that was when I kind of realized not everybody was seeing and experiencing the things I was. But I was experiencing things before that, because across the street, if I were to look out the window, I would see this woman that was always standing there whenever the family was outside. She was always in the same kind of attire, and one day I walked out and she just vanished, evaporated. It looked like she just evaporated. And I was like, okay, that seems normal, I guess. I didn't know any different because I was a child. But yeah, that's.
Go ahead, Misty.
Well, I was going to say, did these things concern you, or were you, or do you ever have a time that you thought, oh my goodness, I'm seeing things, other people aren't seeing things? Did you ever kind of have a time where it was frightening to you, and how did you move over that, or did it just kind of morph into a part of your being and you accepted it?
For me, it wasn't a scary experience. I could see that they were there, and when I was younger, one of my predominant senses was claircognizance, which is just like an instant download of information from spirit world, and so I knew that they were there to help. I knew that they were there to comfort, and I never felt an overwhelming pressure or anything that felt scary to me. I will say it was a little annoying as a child, because I was, a kid, and I had 10 people in my room as I'm trying to go to sleep, and all talking at once. So what I did was, and this was again when I was around 7, 8-ish, I would turn the radio on and fall asleep to music to drown out the 10, 15 people talking to me. which then ended up dulling down my hearing spirit world for like the next 10 years. But that's kind of how I coped with that. I didn't mind seeing them. I didn't mind knowing that they were there, but it was just like hearing them constantly was not okay with me, so that kind of dulled down as a kid.
Interesting.
Jack,
And did you, no, you go ahead, Patty.
I was going to say, no, look, I feel so badly. If you were here, we'd be, again, I tend to say this, we'd be jumping on your lap, hugging on your neck, saying, tell us more, tell us more. we are so excited because it's fascinating. And as Misty was saying pre-show, you know, it's one thing if you go to a reading, but it's very rare that you get to sit and speak with a medium about their gift, about their experiences, about how they managed it. And, you know, I know I've walked away from these things thinking, wow, wouldn't it be amazing to do that? But, you know, maybe there are some other kinds of considerations when you're thinking about that at the same time, though it seemed to happen to you along the way. The question I was going to ask, though, was, you sounded like it was normal, 10 people in your room before you go to bed. I know I was a scary kid, so that would have really wigged me out. But what about your family? Could you talk to them about this, and they humor you or pat you on the head or what?
I was just thought that I had a very active imagination, and the shows that I liked kind of like geared towards, oh, it's probably just his imagination because he watches these types of shows like Charmed and all these kind of stuff where it had like that spiritual essence to it. And it wasn't until I was about 15 that my aunt started taking me seriously, because we were in the car going over to her house, and she says, you know, I need to ask you something. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it? And she's like, I'm sort of like seeing this person at like work, and like it's just annoying me, and it's just I don't know who it is and like what it is or you know what's going on. And she you know it was not joyous for her, and she was saying like how he had this flower and you know this, that, and the other about him and around this woman. And I said, okay, tell her. And she's like, what do you like? Okay, just tell her. So she went up to the woman she worked with, said, this is a flower that this guy is holding, and he looks like this, and you know this is what he's doing, and he's giving you this flower. And she's like, does this flower mean anything to you? And she's like, that sounds like my brother who died. And oh, well, before that, my aunt said, you know, and usually if they're giving you flowers like this, it's like a happy anniversary or happy birthday type of thing. And the woman said, you know, that's my favorite flower, and that sounds like my brother who died a few years ago. And so that was like my aunt's first like, oh no, like this is real. And then when I was 18 is when I read for my grandmother, because her sister passed, and I had never even known about the sister because no one talked about her. So I didn't even know she existed until she passed. So I did a reading for her, and she's like, you know, about 85% of that, you know, was right. So that's interesting. And she called her son, who was in a different state, and was, you know, told her about this stuff, and or told him about this stuff, and he like verified the things that she didn't know, like certain things around her passing, who was around, what was going on, all this kind of stuff. And so that's when my grandmother started to believe me. And then when I was around the same age, 18, is when I started doing this professionally, and I'd have people come to the house. And at one point my parents like started taking me seriously, because they saw that I wasn't just reading for like, you know, high schoolers that I went to school with or like schoolmates. It was like a 40-year-old woman was walking out the door, and they were like, okay, this adult is paying him and taking him seriously. Something is, you know, something's going on there.
Enterprising young man, and it doesn't matter how he gets there as long as it's legal, but that's great. You know, that begs the question then about evidential, now that you're talking about things that are verifiable. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what that means to you, and I know that means different things to the scientific community.
Yeah. Yeah, and for me, like, I call myself an evidential medium because in a session, whether it be a public demonstration, audience reading event, or a private sitting, I look over there because that's where I see my clients. So anyway, what I want to do is start with what I call identifying evidence, which is specific things about the person, their personality, how they passed, significant life events, things that they enjoyed doing, all of this kind of stuff to build this person back to life. And I've actually had multiple people, and one recently at an audience reading, say, you know, you painted her back to life. And I was like, that's all I can ask for.
Wow,
because, you know, giving such minute details and I was actually in a intensive with Austin, and I did a demo, and it's stuff like very specific that I like to get, because otherwise I can say there's a woman with you and she loves you very much and she's supporting you through these changes, which I've seen some people do and call that
Right.
mediumship, and I'm like,
Right.
okay, but you have so many people that are behind you in spirit world. You have, countless women, countless men, all this kind of stuff. So what is it about that particular person? So I like to give all that identifying evidence, and then after that I move into what's called survival evidence, which is things that have happened since the person's passed to show the continuity of life. So things that have happened since they've been around, how they're guiding you maybe. And the reason I brought up the intensive with Austin, who you had on last week, was because in that she commented on how specific I got with the fact that I was reading for this woman and her mother was around this woman's son. And she saw him going through educational stuff, but when I brought it through, it was she's watching him and helping him through this educational process, and she knows that it's not a university or a college or an institution like that. It's actually an apprenticeship where it's hands-on and it's more of an apprenticeship. So it's those minute details that I really like to get to show that they're really around, and that's why I call myself an evidential medium.
Wonderful.
So it's not, I'm talking here with Grandma and she loves you very much. It's I'm talking with Grandma and she's wearing her purple hat that she hasn't taken off for 20 years, and it's threadbare on the left-hand side, so she's got a soda purple or a pink flower on it. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, definitely. And it's, and I'm very visual, so, and the thing is, and the reason I like to say I'm left brain thinker is because I'm very analytical. I'm very, structured in the way I do things, and I'm very linear. Like when they bring something through, I had a reading with a woman and this is another audience reading event, and I was connecting to her father, and then he talked about her brother, and then after that he went to talk about the kids, and she kept thinking it was her kids. But with me, I'm a very linear person, so if Dad brings up your brother and then starts talking about kids, he's talking about your brother's kids and the issues going on there, not necessarily your kids. I don't really like to go back and forth between information and just kind of like give random pieces. I like it to be very linear and very focused, just because that's how my mind works and that's how I'm best able to communicate it. So that's another reason.
Terrific. Yeah. That's terrific.
Jack, I want to jump back a bit to the people in your room when you were young. Now, were those people there because they wanted to give you messages, or when they are there around you, are they there because they want to use you for something, or are they just in your space? Like, what? Give me some clarity here. Why do you think those people were there?
Great question.
Basically because they knew I had mediumistic gifts, and they knew I would come in contact with their loved ones. I didn't find this out until later in life, because it happened to me. When I started to see clients regularly, I'd have people passing through my room, and I'm just like, okay, they'd give me a few pieces, and then I'd realize that it's for a client that I'm going to see, or like even a friend that I have. And I don't really read for family and friends anymore, just because that gets too dicey with the information. So that was, they just knew I was going to come in contact with their loved ones, so they were stepping into my energy so that I could relay what they wanted to say. Now I have a better handle on it, so where if I'm not sitting with a client or sitting in a demonstration kind of arena, then I'm turned off. I don't see them, just because like I've created these boundaries. And I always like to say, like, and people say, oh, how do you do that? I'm like, I have boundaries with the living, so I can obviously make them with the dead. If I don't want someone talking to me in a particular manner and I feel is disrespectful to me in someone in body, then I wouldn't stand for it with someone in spirit world. So
very interesting. Sort of like turning the closed sign or the open sign to closed, right?
Pretty much. A lot of mediums will talk about a switch or a light or like a door, and an elevator door closing, something like that. Me, it's all about intention. So even though I'm very visual, I'm also very cognizant. So I'm very cognitive, and it's just kind of like okay, I'm ready. So then I can turn and just look, and they're there. But that's just how it works for me, particularly.
And Jack, so if someone comes to you for a reading, I have no idea how this works, and maybe it's hard for you to explain, I don't know, but I'm wondering how there's all these people, thousands on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
How do they know that to connect? And have you ever had it that they haven't been there, or do you have an explanation of that?
I haven't had an experience where they just weren't there. I've had an experience where maybe the person they really wanted to connect with didn't step in, and a different loved one came in, but that was because in that respect they needed to hear this information more than they needed the information of the person they really wanted to talk to. And I've been told that multiple times. Like a woman I did a private group for a few years ago. She was wearing every jewelry of her father's, and she's like hoping it'll bring him in. But her mom was the one to step in and talk about some stuff going on with her and the law and her son and all this kind of stuff. And she's like, afterwards she came up to me and said, I really wanted to hear from my dad, but I totally understand with what happened and what she was talking about, why my mom had to come in today. So, but with that is how do the spirits know to come in contact with me? They're the ones that orchestrate it. Like they're the ones that either make my clients see a post on Facebook, or ask a friend if they know a medium, or just happen upon searching Gilbert mediums or something like that, or evidential mediumship, or maybe something like that. So their loved ones guide them to me, and then and I've had people say like, I want to connect with people I know. I don't want to just talk to anybody in the spirit world. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's the whole point. Is I don't open myself up to just anybody when I'm sitting with a client. What I do is I set the intention that the only people stepping in are going to be people, excuse me, be people connected to this person that is able to help them move forward. And so that's how I do it. It's more just on intention, and then so by setting that intention, the only energies that I'm connecting with are going to be those of my clients.
Well, and that makes sense, because it would seem odd that just anybody would pop in if there doesn't seem to be a very compelling reason, I would think, on the other side for just anybody to pop in, unless it was a loved one.
Yeah.
So and that's orchestrated there. Jack, you were talking about earlier these people there. Is there a difference, and do you have a difference personally between those people that were there, and it sounds like those were people that may have recognized your mediumship abilities and wanted to get messages, but tell me how different that is from guides, spirit guides, and whether you work in that realm at all.
Well, I don't actually work with spirit guides that you wouldn't have known in life. So if you're talking about your primary guide who you've had since birth, or your guardian angels, I don't necessarily deal with that, just because when people did come see me for that kind of stuff, they wanted to know their guide's name, or what they looked like, or all this kind of stuff about their past life.
And that's not what you do.
Yeah, and that didn't seem very relevant to me. It didn't seem like things that can be proven. Like if I told you have a very attractive Armenian man who's helping you through this, part of your life, that doesn't do anything for you. Now,
so the credibility factor also for you to be able to share these evidential pieces gives more a validation sort of thing. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, and I mean, granted, they could, and if they do come for a spiritual mediumship reading, which I see as more just connecting to your guides, and it's more of a life reading, but with your guides.
Okay.
That's someone you might need to look for specifically for that. But what I do in the readings is I ask the loved ones coming in that step in that are going to be helpful in being able to guide you. And a lot of times it is going to be a family member that's guiding you through a particular part of your life. So I can get through the identifying evidence of who it is, but then I can also get through the survival evidence of how they're helping you. And I always give if they're really good at something in life, they're going to be really good at it in spirit world. So if Dad was terrible with finances and he steps in trying to help you with finances, are you really going to take that advice? He wasn't great. He was never great at managing his budget or anything. But if Mom comes in always trying to help you with your love life and always setting you up with these really good guys, but just things didn't work out, odds are if she's going to come in talking about your love life, she's going to hook you up with a guy that you would be compatible with. Whether it works out is totally up to you two, but she's still able to help in that respect just because she was good at that in life.
Gotcha. So what you're saying is then from death into this transition to the other side, that we still bring us and we still bring our personalities, as your experience then.
Yes, absolutely. Because, and that's for me is, how else would we be able to identify this person if we didn't, if we weren't the same person we are here. Yes,
Right.
we grow and we learn different things, but we still have to have that core personality, core personality about us to be able to identify, our essence. Now, yeah?
Oh.
Finish your thought.
Oh, no, what I was going to say is, there are people who I've read for an array of people. Some were abused. I read for a woman recently in the past month or so that she was, sexually abused and physically abused by her father, but her father was stepping in, and he was talking about, one, the things that he did and how he apologized for that, but he also pointed out his alcoholism and how he actually, she met her husband because of her father and his issues, and it didn't make sense to me or her until her husband tapped her on the knee and said, we met at a child of alcohol support group, or alcoholics support group. So because she had an alcoholic father, he, that whole situation, though very unpleasant and obviously very abusive, put her in a spot to be in a support group for children of alcoholic parents that ended up meeting her husband, who, went through the same kind of stuff and who's a great man to her. So they even though they weren't the best, they can still help.
Gotcha. That's good to get those messages too, because I would think someone like that who has, had a lifetime of having to deal with those kinds of issues, it may not take away the total experience or the feelings around this experience, but it certainly can help mitigate some of the losses. I think that, and I guess that's, considering that our topic is death, dying, grief, and loss, it kind of brings me to a question about what you find when it comes to mediums and loss, and the kinds of things that people are going through before they come to see you. Have you seen, I personally have seen some remarkable healing, whether that's something that lasted after they left the room, but some amazing validation for people who are very concerned about their loved ones on the other side. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, and it's interesting because there's obviously we know the stages of grief, and it's very important to know which stage you're at, whether you're open to even seeing a medium. Because if you're in an anger stage, if you don't have at least somewhat resolution to what's going on or what has happened, like I had a colleague who was doing a group reading. She was bringing through this person and how he passed and how he was taking partial responsibility for it and all this kind of stuff. This woman was so still in a state of anger with her grief that she lunged at my friend. And people had to hold her back from attacking my friend. So she was clearly not in a space to get that connection. So she should, I always say, be aware of where you are. And with that, what I try to do anyway with it is I try to make them understand, yes, you have to absolutely accept that you have a loss in respect to the connection, or not the connection, but the way in which you connected with your loved one. Because their physical body is gone. You cannot hug them like that. You cannot communicate with them in the same way. You cannot see them that way. You cannot hear them that way. It's different. And I absolutely, get that through to my clients, because allowing that acceptance to come through allows them to be open and understand that they're still very connected to their loved ones. It's just in a very different way, and they have to now utilize signs and symbols, or even if they're a very auditory person. So if someone is better learning something if they're told, and if someone walks them through it step by step, as in they're telling them, they're probably going to hear their loved one's voice in their mind, or even have a conversation with them, and they're going to think it's, just, oh, that's what I'm sure that's my mind putting in what I think my mom would say, or something like that. Or they may walk by a conversation and hear something that resonates with them on the same level as, that passing. Or they may end up getting their signs and symbols and connection through music and just these auditory means. But I've had people come in the depressed stage of grief, and I've literally had people come in like hunched over like this, sitting on my couch, and as it, like, I don't honestly look at my clients a lot of the times when I'm doing readings. I'm always focused to my right where my spirit people are, or where their spirit people are, and then I'll look over just to make sure I'm on the right path and we're understanding each other. But I've seen people go from like this to just completely up.
Yes.
And as I'm at the door, I've had countless people say, I've taken a weight off me, and one person there, well, not one person, but one person in particular, she said that, as well as her mom had been talking about how it wasn't her time to be with them and her family in the spirit world, and that she needs to understand she's not alone. And I had to walk her through the process of understanding that it is different, but these are now the ways you can communicate with them. And she was suicidal. She wanted to, she wanted to kill herself so that she could be with her family in the spirit world, because it was just too much. But understanding that communication, and I think she was the one that contacted me too about it, like saying, it's helped her even after the reading, because now she is seeing those signs. And I read for a mother who, one of the evidential pieces of information was he was like, one, he was the baby of the family, but two, he had a very special connection with her. And then three, one of the special connections they shared was he would write her little notes, little letters, and just give them to her, leave them for her. And he was giving that as a piece of evidence of what he did in life. And now he said he wanted to continue talking to her that way. And he showed me like her writing. So what it showed to me was she needed to do journaling as if she was talking to him, and
Right.
he would then take in a sense take over and have her and blend with her energy and start doing automatic writing, where he would literally write her notes. And with automatic writing, you'll see the difference between your writing and then when you're channeling and getting that connection to your loved ones, your angels, your spirit guides, whatever. And you'll see even the difference in like the slants, or just the difference in handwriting. Some people go from cursive or handwriting to print, and some do the opposite, or so that was one way she's going to connect. And so that's what I see about like it's definitely an understanding that there is a loss. You had a loss. You do not get to be with them in the same way. But when we work through that loss by showing that they're still around through the survival evidence, then we can move into understanding how we're still connected and how we're able to keep that connection and communication flowing without the medium necessary.
Well, I like that you said that, because it really pairs up with, and you mentioned Austin Wells, who was our guest last week. It really pairs up with what she was saying very specifically about, she happens to be a grief counselor as well, but for you, whether that's not your, not what you do, but at least you have this recognition that there are some people that might be better off at times if they're not in a place of acceptance, a place of openness, a place where they can bring this information to them and have it be of value, that you recognize that. Because I think there's a concern by some people out there that might think, that a medium's going to just read anybody, and it sounds like you want to make sure that they're getting not only value, but comfort and true grief, healing from grief along the way.
Definitely. And like and with that, I people say that's ridiculous to be selective about the people or the clients that I accept, but I don't decline them outright. I'll say, maybe you need some time, maybe you need something, but I'm just not the medium at this moment. Because if you're just in desperate need of that connection, then there is something that I can't do. Like if you just need that connection, you don't feel it yourself, which means that nothing I say is going to help you. And in those cases, I do refer to grief counselors, because sometimes a grief counselor is what you need. Sometimes a medium is what you need. Sometimes, it just depends on what you're looking for and what your needs are at that moment. And the one thing I'll say about especially the stages of grief, there is I think it's the bargaining stage is what it's called, but it's like basically when all you want is that last conversation or that bit of if I could have, I would have, or had those conversations, and that can be an amazing time to get a sitting with a medium, or it could be a very difficult time, because if you've got the right mindset, it could be a wonderful experience, because then you want to hear those last words, you want to hear that last connection you have, or not last connection, I shouldn't say last connection, but that have that communication, and then are able to continue with it. And then you also have the flip side of that, is where you're so desperate to hear from a loved one that if the medium, he or she, says, I have a woman here and she loves you very much and she's supporting you, you're going to break down, because that's all you wanted to hear from this person, or but it doesn't come with anything of substance to where that really was my mother, that really was my sister, that really was my cousin, that really was my brother. It's just, there's this person here and they love you very much. I've seen mediums say, I'm not sure who this is, I can't identify, but I know it's a man and it's around you, and they're supporting you and they see you going through this change and they want to help you with it. And that bothers me, because it's a lovely message, but there's nothing substantial about it. And that's where different stages of grief can be wonderful and at the same time very bad. So,
Jack, we have a little bit of conversation going on in the comment stream, and one of them kind of connects with a question I had, and that was you mentioned that when the people on the other side are in your presence, they maybe they have messages you don't want to hear, or you mentioned maybe I'm not putting this right, that there was bickering. This was in a pre-show. But just let me bring it around. So the question was from Dan Weeks, and I had this question too. There's this idea that when we cross over, we'll know everything, and all our uncertainties and everything will, we will see the light, and all the negative energies will fall away. So does that happen or not, or to what degree, or can you speak to that?
I think there are a couple questions in there, so I'm going to answer all of them. Yes, when we pass over, we are accepted by our loved ones, our guides, our angels, and we're pretty much ushered into spirit world, where we go through pretty much a cleansing process, where we leave all the human emotions behind: anger, jealousy, vengeance, rage, depression. All of those kinds of things are pretty much just lifted from us, and we do return to our divine state, however you want to put that, our original form. And we do go through this life review where we do experience our connection to everybody we've ever come in contact with. And this is down to like the cashier that you weren't in the greatest moods that day and you lashed out at this person. You'll see how that affected like that person's day and that relationship. But like in respects to like the woman that I talked about earlier with her father, like he went through his life review. He experienced his influence on her. So the influence of the sexual abuse, he experienced that. He experienced the all the forms of abuse. He experienced the neglect, the feelings that she went through. He experienced how it affected her relationships with other people and how it affected just her life in general, but even those specific people, and how maybe she had a difficult time with relationships or difficult times in these because of that action that he took. And this doesn't mean that they're in hell. Obviously not. This is just them experiencing it and understanding what they did so that they're able to exactly that, understand what they did, and then possibly help, like the father did. He put her through immense pain when he was alive, and he understood how much that affected her and her relationships, and so he guided her to that group for children of alcoholics, and that's how she met her husband. So I wouldn't say we know everything when we pass, but we do get a wider understanding. And then when you're talking about like the bickering, when you're talking about like the spirits bickering, yeah, and it's true, they do, because they keep their personalities. So like if mom was a very
I just thought that it would be over with by the time that you leave this earth. I just thought.
Well, it's like if mom and if like you have a mother pass and you have a sister who passed, and they were very very powerful women, very very powerful in their communication, wanted to talk, took over communication, very dominating in conversation. I asked the spirit people to step in groups. So like I'm going to go through, I have, mother, grandfather, and child here that want to connect to you, and then I'll go through each of them individually, but I call them in as groups so that I can just get through everybody. Mm-hmm. And with that, when I call them into groups and you have mom and sister who were very powerful, dominating figures in conversation, they're going to bicker because they wanted to fight over who goes first and who's talking. Oh, so I used to go.
I'm sorry to laugh because I just think, who am I going to be on the other side? I'm afraid I'm going to be one of those women. Oh,
well, and the thing is, like, originally when I started sitting with people, I was like, guys need to stop. I need to know who, like, say something other than like arguing with each other. Like, I need something for this person, and I'm just watching all of this. And after a few times, it was really terrifying for me, because I'm like, these people are coming to me for help, for guidance, for connection, and like I can't give them anything because these people are arguing about who's going first and what they're going to talk about, and they can't talk about this, and I want to talk about this, and I want to let her know this, and I'm just. And it like really got to me when I first started doing this, like, and seeing clients professionally, because I'm like, no. But I realized that it was, but after a while, I just started saying, they're arguing. I've got two women here. This is what this one looks like. This is what the other one looks like. And they're just like arguing. And the one over here wants to talk to you about this, but the other one's saying she gets to talk to you, and it was like, but that was evidence for them, because that would be their personalities in life. So that literally brought them back to life. Like, oh my God, they always had this kind of argument of like, I want to tell this part of it, and you weren't there, so you don't understand this, and I'll tell this part. And so it became very
oh my gosh.
It became very natural for me when I experienced that to just relay the fact that that's what they were doing. They were bickering about who wanted to talk first and what they were talking about, and then it made so much sense to my clients, which then
became evidential.
Yeah,
right.
and then the spirits would stop, and one person would step forward more, because I had gotten that piece of evidence through, and then once I relay it correctly, then they move on. So that's what happened. But when I started, I was terrified, because like they would go back and forth. And not to say that there was any animosity, but if you did not have the best relationship with your mom, and she came through and she's like, oh my God, just tell my daughter I love her, and she was a wonderful person, and she took such good care of me, you're gonna be like, that's not my mother. I had a woman. I was doing platform at an intensive, and one of I talked about her mother. I went through all the stuff. And I said, do you have any questions for her? And she said, why won't she say I'm sorry? And because I've gone through enough to say that she should have been apologetic, but I never said I'm sorry, and I looked over to her and I was like, why? And she's like, I wouldn't have said I'm sorry. I wouldn't have said I was sorry in life. I'm coming to you. I'm talking to you right now. I know about your son. I know about this. I know all this stuff. So that, and then the woman said, just to let you know, my mother would never say I'm sorry, but when I'd ask her about it, she'd always say, well, I did this for you and I did that for you. That wasn't enough. That wasn't an apology. I have to say something. So that, again, was another piece of evidence, but it's also showing how her mom stayed who she was. But she was still apologetic, just in her way of being apologetic,
Right.
So,
right. Oh my gosh, I don't know why I found that so funny. I guess because you just have the sense that you know, the spirit world, like hopefully there's more wisdom that you get infused with as you pass just from this human form to spirit form. And, you know, now I think about like the arguments that my father and I, who was an attorney, and like he always won. Except now that I'm still here, I keep thinking I'm winning, but maybe not the case. Although I still do have conversations with them that are frustrating. So I know that must be a real conversation because he's still doing his lawyer thing.
Yeah.
But oh my gosh,
Yeah.
I find that fascinating. And the fact that you, as a medium, were like, hey guys, you know, like I'm just the messenger. Just can you get it together?
Yeah. Well, and see that about like you would hope we gain more wisdom. We definitely do gain more wisdom as we pass to spirit world, but the way we deliver it is going to be the same as how we would in life. So we may have a lot more wisdom, but we're still going to like I did a reading and it was about like the woman's cooking, and she had me point at the woman sitting next to her, and she's like, she's still cooking, but she's working with you. She does what's wrong with your cooking that she needs to work with you a lot with, because she's trying to work with you a lot. And it was just like, you know, she was a very direct person in life, so she was a very direct person in spirit world. And the woman's like, I don't cook. I don't cook well when I do cook. So and I was like, well, she's still cooking, but she's trying to get you to cook better. So I was like, so it's the same thing. Like, you know, it's wiser, but still in the same manner in which we're going to give it anyway.
Yeah, and I guess also, given that you said that the lower energies of you know, fear and anger and sadness, grief, all those don't carry forward to the other side. So even though these people are bickering on the other side, I'm assuming that they're doing so with lightness, or that it doesn't have the emotional baggage that we sometimes carry with these conversations on the earthly plane. Would you agree?
Yes, absolutely. They're very much like, they just want to bring it through so you know it's them, but then also this is my personality, but there's definitely no animosity. Like I've had people that I've had like parents who step forward and they're like very separated. And that's, you know, just letting me know that they were separated in life, they didn't get along, and then they, you know, back and forth, and I'd be able to explain that to my client. But then after I explain all the stuff that they went through in life, they kind of pull together and kind of hold each other's hands, letting them know, like, they've resolved this issue, they've resolved that issue, this was an argument they had that they are now resolved. So it's just to let you know that they're there. And then also what a medium should be able to show you, if they're having a conversation and communication, is not only what they've done in life, but how they've changed.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So it's not just a message for us, it's also to let us see over there that they've done some changing as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing before the show was this idea of negative energy hanging around, and that the idea of ghosts and hauntings, and the fear aspect of the idea of bad spirits, I guess, is what I'm getting at. And I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that and share your thoughts with our viewers on that.
Yeah. It's always great when someone's talking about a ghost or something, and they basically say, like, oh, I don't believe in that. And they're like, you're a medium and you don't believe in ghosts? And it's like, well, it depends on what you consider a ghost. Most people, they define a ghost as someone who has passed and has has baggage with them, and they didn't cross over. They didn't fully transition into the light, and what have you. And in my experience, and I've been sitting with people for 11 years now, doing it professionally for 7-ish years, and all that time I've never come across a spirit that hasn't crossed over. I've had people ask me to their homes because they thought it was haunted because of this, that, and the other. And in one respect, I went to a house and I could hear the bickering, and like not even just bickering, but outright fights in my mind. But I knew that that was residual energy of the fights that they would have had before this person passed. And like the woman's grandfather was stepping in and saying, you know, he was the one that passed. He passed in the house, and he was going through who he was and how he was, but how he's changed. And then he goes into, but that stuff, that all that going on, that's not me. That is not me. So, and then I can walk through the house and see, okay, well, there's a cluster of energy here that people may view as a ghost because, like, maybe a door is shutting, or like it's just really heavy and just dark kind of like feeling energy when they walk through it. And that's because maybe an argument happened there, or what I'll say is it's a heightened emotional experience that can cause an impression. So even if someone is very happy, like I've had people say, oh, I've got a ghost in my house, but she's fine, she's lovely, she's very happy and bubbly and all this. And the thing is, it can be a very happy experience, it can be a very sad experience, it could be a traumatic experience, it could be murder, it could be a suicide, it could be happy like a party, or, you know, just a very happy person. And if they're in that house for so long, they're going to imprint their energy. So what a lot of ghost hunters or paranormal investigators do, from what I've experienced and understand, they're not necessarily communicating with a spirit who hasn't crossed over. What they're experiencing is the imprint of that energy that was there previously. So, and a lot of times they'll talk about how they're, you know, this ghost is stuck in a loop. Like they shoot themselves every night, they hang themselves every night. This woman always dances in the same place every night, whatever. And that's not a ghost reliving the same things they had to go through in their life. It is that imprint of that specific event. So if if the trauma of someone hanging themselves, if that's what they're seeing, it's not the ghost, it's the imprint of the person that hung themselves, who was so depressed, who didn't know where to go, who was so misguided and didn't know what to do with their life, and so depressed and sad, that intense emotion imprinted that energy. On the same level as the woman dancing in the same place every day, you know, she was so happy and so excited about something that she imprinted that joy and happiness into that moment. And that's what I understand and see them communicating with.
So if that's the scenario, and I ask this for a personal reason too, because I'm wondering, the older the house or the structure, might there be more imprints? For example, I live in a 250-year-old Revolutionary War.
It's Revolutionary War too. Like you've probably got some imprints there that are lasting.
Well, what's good is, and I will tell you, I think I mentioned this on one show at one point. I'm familiar with saging, you know, the house, and I would ask you too if that's probably a way to help kind of dissipate some of these, certainly the heavier energies or the more negative ones that would feel uncomfortable. But when we first came here, I didn't want to freak out my husband, who may be watching now, by all of a sudden being this woo-woo girl and bringing out the sage and going from room to room. So what I did was I went to each room. He didn't know this at the time. He probably knows it now. And kissed him passionately in each room and just said to the ghosts, and I let the kiss kind of waft up and onto the walls and said, okay, ghosts, because I didn't want to scare him, but he certainly was okay with a kiss in each room. So I let it waft up on the walls and said, okay, ghosts, like, we're going to be here. If you're here, like, just be kind and good to us. And frankly, there's some things I feel, and my cats definitely see some things. But for the most part, I have felt really comfortable. Yet in other houses, I have not felt comfortable in certain rooms. So I'm thinking that my little passion made a difference. And they thought, we gotta be okay with this chickadee.
Yeah. Well, and I love that, because yes, if you are the type of person that likes to do things physically like that, sage works wonderfully. You can also, what I did just to make the woman feel better was I gave her crystals to place in each room of the house to kind of amp up the energy that way.
Right.
Your kissing idea. Next time I move and with a boyfriend, I'm gonna have to try that, or husband, whatever happens.
Go for it, because it's. I mean, it's just energy, right? And I guess with the sage, that's moving energy. I mean, it's intent too, isn't it? Intention, right?
And see, that's where I was gonna move into. Like after I was talking about your kiss and all that, like
we can stay there if you want, honey. No, we can keep it.
we could stay there. We could stay there. But what I do is I'm all about self-empowerment, and if you use tools like sage or crystals or anything, that's wonderful. You know, people use Reiki energy when like to heal the house, basically. I implore you to do any and all of that you choose. Me personally, I don't really use any kind of spiritual protection or anything like that. Much like what you did, you took it into your own empowerment and you didn't need anything. Well, you might need your husband at that point, but other than that, you didn't need anything. For me, I use my own energy and I explain this as like energy, because we know that energy vibrates at a low vibration and a high vibration. Now, if you're vibrating at a high vibration, you're pretty much just like little particle, molecule kind of stuff. And if you're at more dense, you obviously have more body to you. So if I'm vibrating at a high frequency, to even connect to me, a low vibration would have to raise its energy, because that's the only way to connect. Because if you're a dense energy, like I'm trying to think of, like, you know, imagine like dust particles here, and my fist is going through those dust particles. This is that negative energy. It's not really going to affect me all that much. It may displace some energy, but then it'll just go back to where it was, because, you know, it can't. It can't connect. Yeah, like a low vibration. Like, let me see. I'm trying to, like, I'm just going to use my phone and my water bottle. These are low vibrating frequencies because they're dense. So obviously they can hit each other and connect. But if you're at a high vibration, you can't connect to lower vibrations. So in that respect, I do that to kind of like, what I see is like that vibration and that light starting in my chest. I don't know why it starts in my chest, but for me it's my chest. And it kind of envelops my entire body and then expands past it, and then to the room, to the house, to the building, to whatever it is that I'm in. That's how it works. And like a friend of mine texted me one day saying, you know, is there a way to cleanse my office or my desk, because I just feel really drained and I don't feel good, and it's probably because the person had a bad attitude. The person that had my desk had a bad attitude before that. And so I text him like step by step how to do this, like the visualization, the energy, all this kind of stuff. And he said it, you know, his desk felt fine, his workspace felt wonderful. And so that's how I like to empower people into that. And it doesn't work for everybody, but it works for the people that I've talked to. So, and it works for me. So that's just how I do it. But I definitely, I'm gonna keep that kiss idea in mind.
Just make sure that you have the intention of it wafting out to all corners and kind of cleaning out anything with this really good, juicy, wonderful energy. So.
Yes, and exactly, right. Going back to intention, you intended for that to like make it a more positive environment, and I love that. See, that's getting creative with your own empowerment. Like I honestly would never have thought to do that. I would not have, but that's.
Well, there you go. You don't even need to quote me. You can just go ahead, and use that as your information. That's great. You don't need to give me credit, because you know it's really like spreading the love. Seriously, when we talk about that love energy at a higher vibration, you know, I get that, and I think we've all met, even if one is not necessarily that connected to energy, we've all had experiences where, for some unknown intellectual reason, we were attracted or not attracted to a person or a thing, and it might not even be because of their personality, something that they're going through. We've all had that, so it's neat that you translate that into lower or higher vibration. But speaking of that, since we were talking about vibration, it just came to mind this second. Don't the spirits, I have heard, but maybe this is not your experience, don't the spirits have to kind of lower their vibration to some degree to be able to communicate with you, because you are much denser than they are?
And the thing with that is, because they're moving at such a high frequency, their communication is going to be quite high and rapid. And if it's too high, then obviously we're not going to be able to get through all the information they're trying to get through, because we're still stuck on the first two pieces, because they've just shown us 20 things in 1 second. So they do have to lower their vibrations, and then I have to raise mine. And it's interesting to see, because when doing readings, I've also been able to gauge how they were, like, personality-wise in their communication by the way I'm communicating. If I'm communicating in a very rapid way, this spirit person would have been it's a really good connection, but also they probably talked very fast. And then if it's like pulling teeth and I'm very slow with the information at first, I instantly know that this person did not communicate very well in life, and that was a hindrance for them, which is a piece of evidence. And then once I've moved past that, then they start flowing in with quicker information.
Interesting. So interesting.
Amazing.
Misty, I know you probably were going to jump in too. I have two questions. I know we're heading towards the top of the hour here, but one I wanted to touch on, and then the second one was basically how we can do what you do. Maybe not necessarily for payment, but for connection. But prior to that, I wanted to ask a little bit, because we did talk about it, skepticism, and I know to me, I'm someone who certainly sees this as just kind of everyday normal stuff. But I'm sure I had to come there too. But for those people that this is really hard to understand, hard to take, and not even trying to convince them, what do you say to someone who's a skeptic? Or do you even say, does it matter to even have a conversation about this with a skeptic? Because they're not open anyway, so where would you go with it?
Well, for me, I love skeptics because they make me work for it. But they're open to, because I like that too. I like to get the juicy, good information that just makes you say, that was definitely them, there's no disputing that. But and I'm great with that because I'm that way too. Like if I've seen mediums on platform, they will a lot of them that I've seen don't do that much evidential stuff, which is why I'm actually going to teach a class on evidential platform mediumship to really get to that part rather than just like a psychic level message. But what I say to them is be open. And like for skeptics, I say be open because if you because the skeptics really do want to believe, they just need proof, as in like evidence that you could not have gained any other way other than communicating with this loved one. Now, on the flip side of that, there are cynics. I don't know why it took me a second to say cynics, but cynics are, I don't deal with cynics. I don't have conversations with them. I say, good for you, that's your belief, and I don't want to change that. If that's what works for you, wonderful. This is what works for me. But a cynic is someone who's just not going to, it doesn't matter what I say or what I do, they're not going to believe that there is an afterlife. They're not going to believe that this communication is happening. And then they lose out. So along with my efforts, the spirit world wasted their efforts to try to communicate with someone who just wasn't willing to. And there was a woman on Oprah named Lisa Williams. She did years ago. I don't remember when it was. I think it was like 2007-ish, 2006. And she did a reading for someone who was like skeptical but open to it because she wanted to believe, but she also wanted to make sure it was real. And that went wonderfully. There was another woman that was like, I'm going into this reading, but I don't think I'm going to get anything from it. And she said, and so Lisa said, you would understand the father figure in spirit, or you would understand the father figure that'd be communicating. And the woman's like, well, yeah, I mean, everybody has a father figure. And she goes through like, okay, well, and she goes on about this, and this, and this, and this. And then she's like, well, yeah, but everybody has like that. And she's like, okay, well, she's like, I'm going to be very blunt with you. And this is how I am with clients. It's like, I'm very blunt. I have to be, But she's like, I'm going to be very blunt with you. I'm trying to give you an experience. I'm trying to give you a connection. Now, you can either work with me with, yes, no, it doesn't make sense. I'm fine with that. But you need to work with me rather than saying no. Because my father's not in spirit. My father's not dead. I don't know what that's like. But if your father's coming through, then that means he's passed. And then she brought up John and the woman said later in the interview is like, I know she meant John as in Jon or John, but her father's name was Jonah Seffi or Jonah something because he was Italian. And it's like, that's not her frame of reference, so she's going to hear the syllables and the understanding that she knows. So the fact that she got John out of it, that was his connection, but she wasn't willing to open it up to that. And then she said, you know, he's showing me dancing with you, so, you know, he was a dancer, this, that, and the other. And she, you know, afterwards, she said no, and then afterwards she said, well, you know, he was a professional dancer, he ballroom danced something, but he never danced with me, so he wouldn't show her
Yeah.
that, because we never danced together. So that,
Mm-hmm.
and it's like, no,
Yeah.
so that's why I don't deal with cynics, because like her father was working so hard to let her know that he was there and connecting, but it was wasted on her because she just didn't believe it and didn't want to
Right.
accept it. So, and you
There's
know,
something
that's her prerogative, but don't waste my time and your spirit's time to do that, you know?
and your money. I mean, and there's something
Yeah.
sadder to me going on there than not than being a cynic. And it's great that you made that distinction, because I wouldn't have, prior to you saying that, skeptic, cynic. But the fact that there was this information handed on a platter, and even if you don't believe in the afterlife, wow, kind of how cool to get close, or to get information, or to get some sort of even heart-based or intellectual connection. So, well, I guess, you know, takes all kinds in the world, and that's why the world goes round, because it takes all kinds, right?
Yeah.
It'd be very boring if we didn't disagree on things. So,
That's right.
we're coming up. We're at the top of the hour. I can't believe how quickly this hour went. But before we go, I'd like to just touch on the Afterlife Conference. You can find more about that at www.afterlifeconference.com. And maybe, Jack, if you could speak to what you'll be doing there this year, and then also take a few minutes to share how people can get in touch with you.
Sure. I was invited there by Terry Daniel to conduct private readings. So I'm conducting private one-to-ones, or, you know, a group of maybe 2 to 3 people at a time to connect with their loved ones. And I'm not doing any presentation this year. There's talks about that next year. But this year I'm just there to facilitate the communication from spirit world to those in the physical world. But I'm very honored to be a part of it. It's a very, I love it because it does bring the mysticism and spirituality and communication of mediumship in with the, I don't know if scientific is the right word, but the medical community, because there are physicians, there are counselors, there are, you know, people of notoriety in these fields that are very left-brain analytical fields that are blending with the spiritual aspect to bring an understanding to it. So I love that, and I think it's wonderful that Terry's experiences have led her to create such an event for people. But yeah, that's what I'll be doing there. And then as for how to get in contact with me, best way is jackmario.com. If they want to book a sitting, I have an online booking system, so that's how all the sittings are booked. I have my events that I'm doing. I've got an audience reading event at the end of April in Phoenix, and then one coming up in Huntington Beach in July, and so they can find that stuff. And then if they have any other questions, I also do mentoring, so they can inquire about that for and this isn't just mentoring on a mediumistic level or a psychic level or healing level. It's like if they, you know, want to connect more to their soul, because I believe there's mediumship. Mediumship is connecting with the other side. Psychic awareness is connecting with other people and objects and places, and intuition is connecting with ourselves. So I like a lot of the mentoring I do is more connecting to themselves so that they can utilize their own connection. But I do want to hit on the topic Patty asked about how we can do this for ourselves real quick before we go.
Yes, I appreciate that.
Because that's one thing I do in my sittings is I get through the identifying evidence, survival evidence, and then how they can connect, like the mother with the automatic writing. So we all have very different experiences and how we learn. Our brain just works differently, so we're going to communicate in different ways. And the best thing I can do, or not do, but best thing I can offer is to say, really get in touch with yourself, really know how you receive things. Do you learn more auditorily? Do you learn more visually? Do you learn more kinesthetically by doing it yourself? And that really is going to help you understand your connection to your loved ones. Like with this woman, she was very kinesthetic, so she actually felt the energy of her loved one. And let me see, because I remember I had to do this in reference to her shoulders. So that was one thing I knew was, you know, she feels, and I always say, like, if this happens, go to a doctor, and if you're uncomfortable, because I'm not a medical expert, but she was feeling these sensations of like tingling and pressure, like right here, and I was just, letting her know that when she thinks of her son and that happens, or when she's going through a difficult time, and she feels that, that's her son's way of letting her know he's there supporting her. And then also showing me the writing was another form of how he can communicate with her as well. But there are also dreams. I would say we have the ability to communicate with our own loved ones because we share that connection with them. The medium is only understanding their communication with us because we're sitting with them, or because we're on the phone with them, or on Skype, or wherever. Now, I just happen to have the ability to communicate with anybody's loved one. That's just how it works. But we can all communicate with our own loved ones. Some, it's intention with dreams. So like if you're a very visual person, set the intention before you fall asleep that you want to have a dream about this loved one connecting with you, and you want them to help you in whatever guidance you want them to come through with. And even in the dream, you might not have them talk to you. You may have them like showing you a whole bunch of pictures in your dream. You may actually just sit there and feel a very intense energy, and that's how you're going to feel the connection with them in your dream. The automatic writing, journal to them like you're writing to them, like you're having a conversation with them, and allow them to blend with your energy so that they can write back to you through that automatic writing. Be open to the signs and symbols. Like your everyday life, if you're a more visual person, you may see the sign. My thing was, like, if I'm supposed to be doing this work full time, I needed to see a mermaid. So I'm like, how's that going to work?
You're right, because there's not that many of them around.
And I was, and to my mind, I'm like, I'm not going to see a mermaid. That's not going to happen. And someone posted it to my wall on Facebook, and then I went into the shop, and there was a figurine of a mermaid, and I'm like, oh.
But see, if you were the cynic, Jack, you would say, look, I need to see one in the sea. I need to see one in the ocean.
Yeah.
and then you wouldn't be doing this.
Yeah, and it's true. That's absolutely true. And I'm all about, like, validation. So, like, I'm like, all right, well, that could happen. But when I got in the car the morning I had my 2 weeks notice in hand, well, in my bag, but I just put it in my bag. And I'm like, and I got in the car, sat there for a second, and I'm panicking, like, am I doing the right thing? Oh my God, this could be horrible for me. And I turned the car on, and Sarah Bareilles' Brave came on. So along with the signs of the mermaid, and then I get in the car freaking out, like, oh my God, should I do this? Is this wrong? Is this stupid? Am I just I turn on the car, and not Be Brave, but I Want to See You Be Brave was the song, and I'm just like, okay, I'm doing this full time. I got it. You got my back. You understand. And with that, I started I actually talk at the community colleges around here with the anthropology class, anthropology and occult studies. Got in contact, and now I go speak to her class about spiritual communication, all that, but I also do a demo for them. So, and I've obviously been doing my private readings, and I've been traveling. So, obviously it was the right move for me.
Yes.
Yeah, that's how.
What I'm so excited to hear about that when you talk about the community colleges is that, this is becoming much more mainstream, much more culturally acceptable now, whereas, years ago you might have had to, be under dark of night and, have one of those little doors that somebody knocks and gives you a password or secret code or something to come on in. And now we're starting to get, like, it's getting comfortable, and I love that feels like a consciousness evolution that's happening, where we're seeing more and more people coming forth who are, quote, credible doctors and professional people having these near-death experiences or these connection experiences. And I love that you're out there, a part of this whole, I can't even say it's a movement. What would you say this is? What's happening?
I would work with the word movement, just because, like, you could talk about, like, the spiritualist churches, like, that started as the spiritualist movement, and other people have talked about, like, the spiritual movement, or, conscious evolution, whatever you want to call it, whatever's, like, best for you, and it's the same, like, when you using, like, words like religious words, like, it depends on who you are, what words you're going to use, but it's just, semantics, really. They're the same thing, just different words and what's comfortable. But yeah, I mean, spiritual awakening, or movement, yeah.
Sounds good. Well, I'm all in because if nothing else, even if I didn't believe, it would pique my curiosity no end because to me, and you know, whether one believes in God or something like that or not, it's fascinating to think that there could be something else because otherwise I would feel, for me personally, what's the point? What's the point of hanging out for however many years I'm going to, then splat like I'm dead like a bug on the rug? As my mother used to say, that's how she's going to go, and then she splatted and then came back a talking. So, as an atheist,
Right, and I have had that, and I've had like I've had like the spectrum. I've had people like in spirit world like toss things at me to say like, you know, they threw out the cross, they threw out the Star of David, they threw out all this kind of stuff. So that to me told me that they weren't religious. And then I've had spirits come in with, you know, quoting Bible verses at me, and I'm like, excuse me, like
great.
you're the one talking to me. So, but that was just again evidence of who they were. But yeah, they still keep those kind of things.
Beautiful. Beautiful stuff. Misty, do you have, I know we've been talking a little bit over our time here.
I apologize, I talk a lot.
No, it's wonderful. Actually, that's the beauty of Google Plus, that it's not like, you know, all of a sudden the network's going to come in and shut us down or even give another commercial for something other than we don't want to support. So
yeah, true.
But
no, I think it's been really wonderful. And as far as you know, when we're posting around on social media, it was evidential medium and evidence, and for some people it's scientific evidence. But for me, just having this talk with you for over an hour about your experience of speaking to people who have died, to me that's evidence enough. And I mean, to think that you could have made this stuff up and that you're making a living from it. Yeah, it's really, I think it's so wonderful that we've reached a time in history where this kind of thing is becoming okay. And as Patty said, we don't have to, you know, sneak down the dark alley and pop in the door and make sure no one's seeing us go there. So I really, I feel that we're all blessed to be moving along so quickly, I feel, in the evolutionary consciousness.
Yeah.
So I just want to thank you so much for stepping forward and for stepping into this full time, because I think the more people who do that, the more people will go to see mediums, and then I really think it helps with greater understanding about not only about the afterlife, which is our serious topic, but about life here on Earth, and how when we see it as a continuum, it really enriches things for us in the here and now. So
yeah.
I'm going to mute out so my dog doesn't talk.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, even with the like scientific evidence that people really want, I love that and I respect that, because like it's trying to quantify something that's been otherwise unable to quantify. Like there are people that have done studies on mediums, like triple-blind studies where the person doesn't even, like the sitter doesn't even talk or give a response. They just have to go with the flow of information that the spirit's giving them. And then there are the studies of when someone passes, like seeing that there is an energy that does leave the body or leave and dissipate. And while that's not yet something that's been replicatable, been able to replicate on a consistent basis in the same way, that's obviously why science hasn't proven it yet. But the fact that we're working on that and moving forward through that means that there's a possibility of one day having that connection. And like even science says, like energy doesn't die, it just transforms, and we've already established that through science that we do carry energy with us, and we do have that. So I love that, like we're trying to blend all those avenues.
Well, and I think it's interesting to note too, as we wrap up, that we forget, if we do believe that we are evolving, our consciousness is evolving, the planet is evolving, we have to recognize that science is only as good as our best minds, and science is evolving too. You know, it's not that long ago that people thought the world was flat, and watch out, woo, you're going to drop off the edge.
Exactly.
Not that long ago that there was disputes within the Catholic Church about, was it Galileo? I think they just recently.
I think so.
I think it was Galileo that they apologize to him 400, 500 years later. But hey, we're moving. We're evolving.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't matter how slow, like I guess time is a man-made construct, but
Absolutely.
science is evolving. So to me, when somebody says, well, this was what science proves, that's okay for now, in this moment, in the next moment, in the next moment, the next moment, it may be very different.
Exactly. I love it.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, we got it. We're like a mutual admiration society here, and Jack, it has been. You are a delight, a pleasure, and I hope that our paths will cross again soon. If not here on Earth, maybe up there in the ether somewhere.
Quite possibly.
And tell all your folks to keep kissing into those ethers, and good things will happen.
I will. Thank you guys for having me on. I love this. I love this kind of thing because it's not only talking about the spirit world, but it's also like educating about it as well. So I love that.
And lots of laughter. That's what I like too. Lots of laughter. You killed me with the spirits bickering. That one, I'm gonna have to finish laughing off the air on that one. Anyway, Misty, maybe you can take us out because it's been a great conversation.
All right. Thanks, everyone, so much. We are the Death Chicks. I'm Miss Lynn here with Patty Burgess. Thank you so much for tuning in. Talk to people about us. Talk about death, dying, grief, and loss. That's what we're about, having the open conversations. And it does make things lighter. So we're putting it on the table. Keep tuning in. Share us around. If you haven't yet, follow us on Google+. We're trying to get to 200 viewers. That's our goal, and we hope you'll continue to tune in and join us. We are here doing the Afterlife series until the end of April. So if you like what we're talking about, there's going to be more of it coming up Wednesdays, 3 p.m. Eastern. Bye for now.
All right. Take care, everyone.